Hello again, my dear students. This video is for mathematics or for math subject. And our topic for today is about time. Please watch and listen carefully in our video because we have some questions that I will ask and you will answer. And after that, at the last part of this clip, we have an activity. Again, in our activity, please prepare your learning materials. You have your pencil, eraser, as well as your notebook or paper. Now, we're going to talk about time. And if we said time, first we will discuss about periods of time in a day. A day is divided into two. We have the daytime and the nighttime. If we said daytime, it is the period of time in a day between sunrise and the sunset. Again, if we said daytime, it is the period of time in a day between sunrise and sunset. Next, we also have here the nighttime. Nighttime is the period of time in a day between sunset and sunrise. Again, nighttime, it is the period of time in a day between the sunset and the sunrise. Next, we have here the chart. So if you can see the chart, this is the sunrise and we have here the sunset. So this is the daytime, this is the daytime, and this is the nighttime. So we have here morning, afternoon, evening, and morning. The morning here, this is what we call the early morning. Again, this is what we call the early morning and this is the late morning. We also have here the midday or the noon and this is what we call midnight. Midday or noon, 12 o'clock, and the midnight, we also have this. So we have here the question, what do you do in a day? What do you do in a day? I will show some examples or some pictures. First, he wakes up early in the morning. He wakes up early in the morning. Next, we also have here, in the late morning, he is in the school. In the late morning, he is in the school. Next, he takes his lunch at noon. He takes his lunch at noon. Another one, it says here, in the afternoon. In the afternoon. So what do they do in the afternoon? They returns from their school in the afternoon. They returns from their school in the afternoon. Next, we have here, in the evening. In the evening. So what do they do in the evening? Look at the picture properly. What do they do in the evening? They play in the evening. They play in the evening. And lastly, we have here at night. At night. So what is he doing? If you can see the picture, he goes to bed at night. He goes to bed at night. How about you? When do you do these activities? When do you do these activities? First, we have here eating breakfast or taking breakfast. When do you do this? Is it in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening? Second one, we have here drinking milk. Drinking milk. When do you do this activity? Is it in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening? The third one, we have here watching TV. Watching TV or watching television. When do you do this? Is it in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening? And lastly, we have playing with brother or sister or your friend. When do you play with your brother or your sister or your friend? Is it in the afternoon or in the evening? Continuing with our topic, next one is telling time in hours and minutes. Telling time in hours and minutes. So we have here example of a clock. And the question is, how do you read the two hands of the clock to tell the time? So, we will read the two hands of the clock to tell the time clockwise. We said clockwise, for example, starting from numbers 1 going to number 12. And so on, number 1 to number 12. We have here two arrows. We have the short and the long one. The short one represents the hour hand and the long arrow represents the minute hand. In the morning, we tell the time like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and so on until 12 noon. Next with 12, 1 is 13 hours, 2 is 14 hours, 3 is 15 hours, 4 16 hours, 5 17 hours, 6 18 hours, 7 19 hours. So how will we read the time? First, in the early morning, we have here the time and the short hand or the hour hand is pointing at number 4 and the minute hand is pointing what number? Okay, it is pointing at number 12. So the time is 4 hours. The time is 4 hours. But how do we read it? We read it as 0400 hours. Again, we read it as 0400 hours. Next is in the morning. We have here again the short hand is pointing at number 10 and the long hand is pointing at number 12. So the time is 10 hours. Again, the time is 10 hours. We read it as 1000 hours. Again, 1000 hours. Next, we will discuss about the minute hand. Again, the longer hand is what we call the minute hand. And how will we read the minute hand through the numbers? So we have here 0, 1 is 5, so that will be 5 minutes. 2 is 10 minutes. 3 is 15 minutes. 4 is 20. 5 is 25. 6 is 30. 7 is 35. 4 is 40. 9 is 45 minutes. 10 is 50. 11 is 55. And 12, that will be 60. But when the longer hand pointed to number 12, it becomes 0. So we have here a clock. First is the short hand pointing to number 3. Next is the minute hand pointing to number 1. And number 1 is what minute? Number 1 is 5 minutes. So what is the time? Again, what is the time? The time is 3-5 hours. 3-5 hours. And how will we read it? We read it as 035 hours. 035 hours. Next example. The short hand is pointing to number 7. And the minute hand is pointing to number 10. So what is the time? The time is 7:50 hours. 7:50 hours. How do we come by 50? We count 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So we have there 7:50 hours. And how do we read the time? We read it as 07:50 hours. Again, 07:50 hours. Let's practice to tell the time. Number 1, in the early morning, what is the time? Again, in the early morning, what is the time? The answer, we have 0300 hours. Next, number 2, in the morning, what is the time? In the morning, what is the time? It's 0700 hours. Number 3, in the afternoon, what is the time? In the afternoon, what is the time? It's 1600 hours. And lastly, we have number 4. At night, what is the time? The answer is 2100 hours. This hour hand of the clock is pointing at 7 and it is morning. The time is 7 hours. We read it as 0700 hours. This hour hand of the clock is pointing at 7 and it is evening. The time is 19 hours. We read it as 1900 hours. Let's start with our activity. For example, I do my homework in the evening or afternoon. If your answer is afternoon, then you will write afternoon. Number 1. I go to bed at night, noon. I go to bed at night, noon. Is it night or noon? Next, number 2. I take my breakfast in the afternoon, morning. I take my breakfast in the afternoon, morning. You choose between afternoon or morning. Number 3. I take my lunch in the afternoon, evening. I take my lunch in the afternoon or evening. Next, number 4. I go to school in the evening, morning. I go to school in the evening, morning. Lastly, number 5. I come back from school in the afternoon or morning. I come back from school in the afternoon, morning. Before we end this video, let's have to review first. Again, if you said time, it is divided into 2. We have the daytime and the night time. Telling time in hours and in minutes. Again, the shorthand is for hour hand and the long hand is for the minutes. How do we read the time? First, in the early morning, we read it as 0100 hours. Again, 0100 hours. In the late morning, we read it as 1000 hours. Again, 1000 hours. So it means that from 01 to 09, we will read that as 0100, 0200, 0300 until 0900 hours. The minute hand takes 5 minutes to move to the next number. That means that we will continue counting in 5 around the clock. We will continue to count 5s around the clock. So if we have 1, that is 5 minutes, 2, 10, 3, 15, and 11 is 55. And if we go to 0, it is 60 minutes, but it turns into 0 because we will start to do the clocking again. For our next videos, we will talk more about times. So that is our topic for today. See you again next video. Bye. Stay safe.